I don't know if it would. But if ever there were a time for it, it would be now.
You are Locked On Ducks, your daily podcast on the Oregon Ducks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, it is that time once again for Locked On Ducks. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin, and thank you all so much for making this your first listen or your first view every day. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and your number one source to stay up to date with the Ducks. Bunch of great questions on today's show. What are the vibes out on the trail? Not the highest yet, though Oregon did just have a phenomenal weekend of visits. Lots to get to, including the offensive line on today's show, which is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So, what was I talking about in the cold open? Spencer, you didn't even mention a player. You didn't say anything. Well, that's not entirely true. I said words. I didn't say anyone specifically. But let's talk about Kenyon Sadiq, also known as my alter ego, and an incredibly talented guy who's just a tremendous football player. And if he were to have an alter ego, I bet he'd be a super cool dude. I'm just going to throw that out there. For those that understand, you probably find that amusing. For those that don't, well, follow out Locked On Ducks on Twitter and you'll get it. But Kenyon Sadiq without Evan Stewart has the ability to just absolutely pop off and explode in a way that no Oregon tight end has ever done before. Oregon has had sneakily a great run of tight ends over the years. Guys that have gone on to have solid or well above average NFL careers like Ed Dickson. Johnny Munt, I'm pretty sure, is still in the NFL, floating around. Pharaoh Brown has made it into the league. Terrence Ferguson, of course, just got drafted. But something that Ed Dickson, Terrence Ferguson, and David Paulson, who are three of my favorite tight ends, all have in common, none of them ever hit 600 receiving yards in a single season. Now, Evan Stewart last year was over 600 yards on 48 catches and 5 touchdowns for the Ducks. So you don't just have to replace, in my view, that particular production. You have to replace what I was going to expect him to do, which is closer to 60 catches and around 1,000 yards, maybe double-digit touchdowns. If ever there was an opportunity for a tight end to rewrite the record books, here it is. Here it is. The number of receiving yards you lost from last year. Tez Johnson had just under 900. Trayshawn Holden was over 700. Terrence Ferguson had 591. Evan Stewart had over 600. Total that up and you get... That's a Moneyball reference. But it's a lot to produce or to replicate. I mean, you've got to find those yards somewhere. Now, is Dante Moore going to throw for as many yards as Dylan Gabriel did a season ago? He certainly could. He could throw for less. He could maybe even throw for more, depending on how many games Oregon plays and how much he's able to push the ball down the field and how much success he has in doing so. But when I was thinking about the type of season Kenyon Sadiq could have, I went to two guys who Oregon played last year and went 2-0 against, but didn't actually cover particularly well because it turns out they're really hard to defend, and they were both first-round picks. Tyler Warren at Penn State, Colston Loveland at Michigan. Now, these stats need context, and that's something I always advocate for. Stats are a starting point, never an end point. Maybe where they start you with regards to a conclusion is where you wind up, but you should never just look at numbers and say, "Hey, let's go with that." That's the takeaway. Has to be right there. It means this. You know, just reading a box score, like I couldn't come on here and do reaction shows to Oregon football games if I haven't actually watched the game. The stats might say one thing, but the game might say another. So, Colston Loveland this past year at Michigan, in one of the most inept passing attacks in all of college football, had 56 catches for 582 yards and 5 touchdowns. The year before, when they were better through the air, he had 649 yards. That's in an offense that runs the ball way more than Oregon does and throws to the tight end a lot more than Oregon's offenses typically have. They've used tight ends plenty. Since Dan Lanning took over in 2022, we've seen that a lot with the jumbo packages. They'll have passing sets with multiple tight ends on the field. This has been a consistent theme of the offense since Dan Lanning's been the head coach. Now, at the other end of maybe in his own realm of statistical seasons for a tight end, Tyler Warren last year had 104 catches for over 1,200 yards and 8 touchdowns. He had just over 400 yards in 2023. He almost tripled his yardage output from one season to the next. Pretty remarkable stuff. So, could Kenyon Sadiq have that sort of season? 100% he could. He won't. But he totally could. The reason I say, we'll start with the negative and then get to the more positive angle there that I referenced. The reason I say he won't is just because Oregon lost Evan Stewart does not mean, as I discussed yesterday on the show, they don't have receivers they feel good about, number one, or number two, they are not going to suddenly change their offensive philosophy. They're not going to radically alter the way they approach their passing attack just because Evan Stewart isn't there. Having a Tyler Warren type season requires, Penn State went out and revamped their entire receiver room. They added Hudson from USC. They added Trevor Pena from Syracuse. And they added the new Tez Johnson, a small, undersized guy who'd been good at Troy. I forget his name. But they went out and did that because their receiver depth wasn't good enough. And frankly, their top-end receivers weren't good enough. So they put up those numbers with Tyler Warren partially out of necessity. He also had the talent to do it. Oregon doesn't have that same necessity even without Evan Stewart in the room. But on the flip side, if anyone in college football could have that sort of year, 100% it would be Kenyon Sadiq. Because Warren was a contested catch merchant. He was the sort of guy who had kind of a Justin Jefferson approach. One of my favorite running jokes / memes in the NFL over the last several years is Kirk Cousins when he was on the Vikings, and he'd throw a pass and someone would, just clip it and say, Kirk Cousins just be like, screw it, Justin Jefferson's down there somewhere, which he usually was. Okay, you could do that with Tyler Warren. He's down there. Just throw it to him. He's 6'5". He's bigger than the guy who's guarding. He's just going to go get the football. Now, you can do that with Kenyon Sadiq because he's not just 6'4" and 250 pounds and tops out at reportedly 22.5 miles an hour, but he's also got tremendous leaping ability, as Penn State learned. And I think and we saw it in the Oregon spring game. Heck, I had a segment here on the show, or at least part of a segment during the spring, where someone asked me a question, what's the over-under on Kenyon Sadiq hurdles this year? I believe I set it at 3.5. He might go over. So you could throw the ball up to him. You can treat him like a wide receiver at times and line him up in those positions while also treating him like a traditional tight end and getting yards to him the way you have in years past with the tight end delay routes or the tight end screens or routes over the middle or all that sort of stuff. He can literally do everything. It is great that Oregon has someone as tremendously talented as Sadiq on the offense, capable of stepping up if needed. The reason I think his stats this year more closely resemble Colston Loveland than Tyler Warren is I don't think there's a necessity due to a void of talent in the receiver room to where Dante Moore is going to drop back on third down, and I think he'll look for Kenyon Sadiq a lot. Why wouldn't you? Guy is, to some extent, unless he's double covered, always open. And even when he's double covered, might be kind of open all the time. But I don't think if you go 4 wide with, Whittington or Mekhi Hughes in the backfield, and if you're just in base 11 personnel, and that personnel is DeCorian Moore, Gary Bryant Jr., and Malik Benson, just as a sample wide receiver trio with Kenyon Sadiq, I don't feel like Sadiq's the only reliable target. He might be the most reliable target on the field. I don't think he's the only reliable target on the field. So let me know your thoughts on my alter ego, Kenyon Sadiq, in the comments below or on Twitter. Vibes on the trail are going to improve. First, this episode brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA playoffs are in full swing. Every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, mostly from Tyrese Halliburton, major momentum shifts, he leads those, and can't-miss moments, also from Tyrese Halliburton. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live. With player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays, fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. And if you wanted to bet anything related to Oregon, you can do just that. You can bet their win total is 10.5. 10.5 according to our friends at FanDuel. At least last time that I checked, I don't think Evan Stewart being potentially or likely, I should say, out for the year. I don't think that's going to move Oregon's win total here. Let me just double check that real quick. And no, it's still 10.5, which is tied for the highest in all college football. So you can bet that. You can bet all sorts of other stuff. If you're new to FanDuel, it's a perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com, place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. Before I get into a second segment, which can only happen after a second segment sip, I want to give a shout out to Pat, who we randomly got paired in a golf tournament yesterday out at Widgie Creek in Bend, and we had a great time. And I also won that tournament, and that's the first time I've ever won a golf tournament individually. And I'm just saying, I'm not necessarily making the case that Pat's my lucky charm there, but 1 for 1 with him in the group, and 0 for dozens of other times over 12 years with him not there when competing as an individual. So I'm just saying. But Pat, good to meet you, man. Had a great time. So let's get in the mailbag here. So one of my new favorite segments, probably my new favorite overall segment because it is relatively new, is Spencer's Scale of Agreement. You send me a take. It could be hot, it could be cold, it could be Goldilocks just right, and I give you a ranking of agreement, 1 to 10. 1 being, no, I don't agree. Every now and then I'll throw out a 0, and 10 being 100% I'm in you lockstep, and I might already have given that particular take. Here's one that I'm just going to warn you all right now. This is a hot take. Like, this is a volcano has exploded, and you can see the molten lava on the ground around you. It's not, the kids' game, the floor is lava. This is actual lava of a hot take. McAv22 says, Evan Stewart is not one of the top 4 receivers on this team. How's that for a hot take? You ever see those Hot Ones wings challenges? Like the one where Idris Elba is gone, because he is eating something insanely spicy. I could do that with water or no water, frankly, in reacting to this take. Yeah, I don't pull this out very often. It's reserved for special occasions. That's a 0. That's 0 on Spencer's Scale of Agreement. There is I repeat, no part of me anywhere whatsoever. I searched every inch of my body, and I also was exploring the deep caverns of my own thoughts to see if I could find anything to get behind the idea that Evan Stewart was not one of Oregon's top 4 receivers. Couldn't do it. Could not do it. Not only is he the receiver with the most NFL upside, he was also the one with the most returning production from a season ago, or just at any point in his career. Oregon does not have a receiver on the roster who has had a 600-plus yard season. Evan Stewart had one just last year. So that's an incredibly hot take. Incredibly hot take. I don't even know. I don't know who you could or how you could get into. I know DeCorian Moore is insanely talented. He hasn't taken a snap of college football yet, and Evan Stewart was also a 5-star recruit coming out of high school. I don't think Evan Stewart was number 1 receiver, but he was just one of them. So yeah, that take gets a very rarely seen 0. I respect the boldness to put something out there with your handle on it for me to talk about here on the show. But your question, how's that for a hot take? Among the hottest I have gotten. Yeah, top 4. If you'd said Evan Stewart wasn't the best, like, okay. I still don't know who he would have put into that spot, but at least it would have been just one person that you had ahead of him. You know, maybe you think, nope, DeCorian's better right away. Like, oh, okay. Like, I don't agree, but okay. But top 4, no. Okay, that's not a thing. So, but I respect the boldness. I respect that. That's a hot one sort of challenge right there. DMore9717 sends this one in. Wondering what your confidence level is for us landing these respective players. Brandon Arrington, Tyler Atkinson. I think Hampton is supposed to be Messiah Hampton. Personally, I'd say 2 out of 10, 2 out of 10, 5 out of 10. First, Hampton has been predicted with us for a good minute now, but what I've seen from him of late gives me cause to pause. So, I heard Matt Prame over on the Odds and Audibles podcast say that Messiah Hampton is Oregon's commitment to lose, or it's Ross Douglas's commitment to lose. He's committing later this week, June 13th. So on that front, plus what I have heard and what I've read, I'm sure we've read and seen some of the same things. I'm at an 8 out of 10 on Messiah Hampton. Nothing is ever given. Crazy things can certainly come to pass, but yeah, I'd say that if Oregon doesn't land Messiah Hampton, something went wrong, because this relationship has gone back to Douglas's time at Syracuse. So I feel about an 8 out of 10. As for the others, Atkinson's the one I have the lowest amount of confidence in. I'm with you that that's a 2 out of 10 for me. For Brandon Arrington, I think there's a better chance. I don't think, you didn't mention O'Brien in here as another 5-star athlete that Oregon had on campus over the weekend. By all accounts, it went well. Though, to be fair, I don't think I've ever seen a school have a big weekend of 5-star visitors and it doesn't go well. Like, I've never seen reports, say like Brandon Arrington breaks down his latest visit with Oregon and why it was a disaster. Like, that's never happened. It's always, it was great. It was a game changer. Man, it was huge. Like, I don't know. Those stories are just all over the place this time of year, and I have the same thought every time I see one. Like, who has ever said publicly, who's ever come out publicly and said, yeah, this place is now off my list. The visit was terrible. I don't like the coaching staff. Nobody says that. That doesn't happen. Anyway, so Atkinson is the one I have the least amount of confidence in. Arrington, I'll go 3 out of 10 at the moment, just because there are a number of heavy hitters in the fold, including USC. But the reason I have the least amount of confidence in Atkinson, Arrington is from the state of California. Oregon has recruited that area historically better than they have Georgia, which is where Atkinson is from. He's the number 1 linebacker. Oregon's gone up against Georgia for the number 1 linebacker in the past. The Bulldogs won. And that this guy is in Kirby Smart's backyard. Brian Smith of the Portal Podcast recently ranked his top recruiting head coaches in college football. He had Dan Lanning 4th. He had Kirby Smart 1st for a reason. Atkinson is not a guy that would it be great if he picked Oregon? Yeah, it'd be a massive win. That's one that, even with the high standard that Oregon has set on the trail in the last couple of years under this staff, that would turn heads. Like, whoa, they walked into Kirby's backyard and just pulled Atkinson out of there? Wow, that's huge. So Arrington, I think they have a better shot. I'll go with a 4. I'll go with a 4 actually on Arrington, but I'm at a 1 confidence level on Atkinson, just because I have zero expectation that they can walk into Georgia and pull him out of Kirby's backyard. So John sends this one. Hey, Spencer, with the new NIL bill being passed, what does this mean for current and 2026 players that already have an NIL contract? And do you think we will lose or gain any new recruits this cycle because of it? To answer your second question, no, not expecting that to be the case. Secondly, there was a rush for contracts to get made and signed before this House settlement was coming down, because people read the tea leaves and realized, oh, wait, Deloitte, one of the big 4 accounting firms, is going to be able to just regulate these NIL deals that are worth more than $600, which is, all of them pretty much. I don't think Oregon has a single NIL deal that's worth less than $600. I don't know what the minimum number is. I think there's a base level that they give to all players. I think, don't quote me on that, but that's how most schools, I think, do it. There is no way there is an individual NIL deal worth less than that. So there was a push, and this was not unique to Oregon. This is college athletics everywhere, to get the deals done before this came down. And I think it was part of the reason, along with the roster disruptions that would have come along, that the plaintiffs pushed to, have this ruling get enforced in June rather than in April. And so guys moved in the portal, and then they were able to go and they were able to go and get the deals done, because now some of those deals might not be allowed. But the ones that get grandfathered in, my understanding is those get to remain in place for this year. But starting literally now, because the NIL Go Commission starts being active on Wednesday, they are going to review every NIL deal that gets made now and in the future and determine whether or not it's fair market value. So I don't think it's going to impact Oregon specifically, but the deals that were already signed for players that are on the roster, those stay in place. That's why there's a big rush. Big changes in college sports. What a shock. More on the Spencer scale of agreement and the offensive line, because I like the offensive line. There is something to wonder about the good old Oregon offensive line. All right, here's another Spencer scale of agreement / Goldilocks. That's good. I like that one. Combined multi-year parlay. Oh boy. 2025 Oregon goes 11-2, losing twice to Penn State. I talked about that yesterday on the show too. A lot of people think we'll lose to Penn State twice. Once in the regular season, once in the Big Ten title game. I agree they'll lose in the regular season, or they should. But see them in the Big Ten title game? Impossible. Definitely possible. Make it to the semis, 14-2 question mark. I think that would be Oregon's record, yeah. Then in 2026, we only lose one star to the NFL, Evan Stewart. Well, he could be back. He might not. And keep the other three, Dante Moore, Dylan Thieneman, Mateo Uyunglele. And we go all the way to the Natty with a complete all-around NFL caliber team. And sorry, but we lose to Texas with Arch in full bloom. Okay, parlay is right for this Spencer scale of agreement take. And You parlayed the whole thing together, meaning I can't severance them, right? I can't call Lumen Industries and say, hey, can you split this Spencer scale of agreement taken into two? I can't do that. So since I can't, I'm going with a 2. I'm going with a 2. It's not a 1, and it's not the dreaded 0. The reason I have it at a 2 is not playing Penn State twice and losing. It's not even making it to the semifinals this year. You get the right path, and hey, you never know. Somebody pulls an upset. You get a more favorable matchup. Oregon softball benefited from that. Got to the Women's College World Series after Liberty upset Texas A&M. Like, could Oregon beat Texas A&M? Sure. Was it easier to beat Liberty? 100%. The reason I put this as a 2 is the little parentheses part that you added in here about all three of Dante Moore, Dylan Thieneman, and Mateo Uyunglele returning for next year. I would love, more than anything, for Mateo to come back. He could have an Aiden Hutchinson type season. Heck, he might have one this year, if we're being honest. But that's the problem. As well as being great for Oregon, it's great for his NFL draft stock. I'd venture a guess, this is me guessing, not reporting, that Oregon went to both Josh Connerly and Derek Harmon and said, we will give you in the neighborhood of $1 million, maybe even more, if you come back to play for the Ducks in 2025. But they went to the NFL because they were first-round picks and they knew they were going to be. Mateo, barring an injury this year, first-round pick. Easy. Probably in the top 10. Might not get past pick 7, depending on how the draft order falls. So 2026 going all the way to the Natty, I like that component of it. But if I have to parlay all of this together, that means it's Jenga. If one piece comes out wrong, then the whole thing falls down. So is it possible? Sure. It is possible. Thieneman's an interesting one. I haven't thought about whether he'd go to the NFL after this season. We might have to wait and see how this year plays out. Dante Moore, I'm confident he comes back. Thieneman, 50-50. Mateo, I am 90-10 he's gone to the NFL. But losing to Texas in the national title game next year, 100% possible. Making it to the semis this year, absolutely possible. Losing to Penn State twice, yeah, not the least likely thing. Depends on what happens with Ohio State. Then you get to tiebreakers. So, boy, that was a doozy. That's a doozy of a little college football thought bubble right there. Props for that. Let's wrap with this. Green Yellow Duck says, Spencer, I got a hot take. By the end of the year, Oregon will have a top 5 offensive line unit, a top 3 edge combo, Mateo and Tatum, a top 10 wide receiver core, a top 3 Big Ten quarterback, a top 3 running back in college football, and a top 5 running back room, a top 5 defensive line, and a top 10 defensive back room, and the best tight end in college football. I'm going to double down on my 2 prediction here. So without Evan Stewart, I think this question might have been sent in before the injury news. Definitely not, top 10. Top 10 not impossible, but tougher without Evan Stewart being there. That's probably contingent upon what DeCorian Moore does. Top 5 defensive line, feel good about that. Top 5 running back room, not as confident there because there are 2 just off the top of my head that no matter what happens this year, Oregon cannot be better than. Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price at Notre Dame and Nick Singleton and Katron Allen at Penn State. So automatically, you've got a top 5 running back room in the country as a part of this as part of this hot take here. That's 2 rooms that even if Mekhi Hughes is great, Oregon cannot be better than. So now you have to be better than all but 2 other rooms in college football. That's tough. That is tough. Top 3 edge combo, Mateo and Tatum. That would require a big step from Tatum, but is he capable? Yeah, I think so. I like Tatum Tuioti. Is he Mateo? No, of course not. But is he really good? Yeah, he is. So, man, there were a lot of top 10 defensive back room. That would be exciting. The best tight end in college football. Yeah, I could see that. All right, I'll go, you know what? 4.5. This is a 4.5. But I want to talk about the offensive line unit because, frankly, I think that's the biggest wild card that you put in here because you put the defensive back room as a top 10 unit. Maybe those guys explode and it's Iffy and Jaleel and Thieneman and they're all just really, really good. But the offensive line to me is one of the most interesting questions on this team. The secondary is in there, the wide receiver room is in there, and Dante Moore is in there. I think those are probably, depth at linebacker, secondary question. Depth at tight end, secondary question. The offensive line has likely 4 new starters. As in guys that I know that they have 4 guys who will be starting this year that did not start last year. There is a small question of who. Is Matthew Bedford ready to go coming off an injury, or is Davey Uli better than him? I mean, I've seen Davey Uli play. Dude is solid. Is he unbeatable from a depth chart standpoint? No. But is he solid? Yeah. Well, what's Matthew Bedford in his 7th year of college football coming off an injury? Well, certainly got the body type and the frame for it, but what do you expect there? Kind of hard to say. Emmanuel Prenant should be really good. Isaiah World, Nevada transfer at left tackle, should be really good. Right tackle, could be Alex Harkey, could be Janoris Wilson. We'll just have to wait and see. I think your depth pieces, if Harkey starts, are Wilson, Iuli, and Kavika Rogers, and that's a really, really good lineup of 8 offensive linemen. I wonder how quickly they gel. I don't doubt that they're going to. We saw it last year once Poncho got inserted at center. So the first 2 games, Oregon's offensive line, it was a mess. It was a complete and total. Dylan Gabriel was sacked, 7 times in the first 2 games last year? And then they figured it out once they got Poncho at center. So now that you're starting him there, beginning in game 1, is it automatically smooth and just no issues? I think we have to wait until the Oklahoma State game to have a better idea. But at the very least, we'll be able to look at the Montana State game and go, well, it's a repeat of the Idaho game, or hey, better than the Idaho game last year, But against FCS competition, you can't know a whole heck of a lot. But when Oklahoma State comes to town, then that's a historically solid Big 12 program that had a really bad year last season. That is going to be their first legitimate measuring stick of, hey, there's nowhere. If you watch that game and go, hey, there's nowhere to run and Dante Moore is under pressure all the time, then you know, okay, there's going to be an adjustment process again. But if Dante Moore is sitting with 5-6 seconds to throw the ball, the way I remember Vernon Adams having time to throw behind that Oregon offensive line that was, bringing back a couple guys from the team that went to the national championship, then yeah, I think Oregon could be in really good shape. If you see the running lanes there for Mekhi Hughes, yeah, Oregon could be all right. So that's the question with the offensive line I have. I don't doubt with the amount of experienced talent they have on up front, I don't doubt that they're going to be good. My question is, when do they hit their stride? Because last year it took about a month, really till the Oregon State game, I'd say. That's when they so 3 games. Last year it took 3 games. Does it take 1 game? Does it take 2? Does it take 5? We'll find out in about 2.5 months, roughly, when we have an Oregon football game. Appreciate everyone listening. I'll see you next time. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and go Ducks.